Welcome to Movie Rehash. Today, I'm going to explain an action thriller film released in 2010, called Faster. Spoiler ahead. Watch out and take care. After getting out of prison, Jimmy Cullen heads to a junkyard to meet his informant and retrieves his car, which also holds a gun and some documents containing details about a guy named Prescott Ashton. With the information in hand, Jimmy goes to Prescott's office and shoots him. As FBI agents Humphreys and Cicero start investigating the murder, Jimmy meets up with his informant again, pays him for the car and gun, and then pressures him to reveal more names. Meanwhile, a hitman called Killer receives an assignment from an unknown caller to eliminate Jimmy. At the FBI office, Detective Cicero discovers a videotape containing information about Jimmy's past. She explains to Humphreys that Jimmy and his brother were involved in a bank robbery. Although they successfully carried out the heist, someone betrayed them. Another group of criminals raided them, tortured them for information about the stolen money. When the gangsters threatened to kill them, Cullen's brother Gary didn't believe them and stopped Cullen from revealing anything. Ignoring his brother's warnings, Cullen told them about the money. Tragically, the gangsters, including Prescott, Nixon, and Kenneth Tyson, killed Gary by cutting his throat. They also shot Cullen, who was declared dead by doctors but miraculously survived after a metal plate was implanted in his skull. Detective Cicero tells Humphreys that Cullen is seeking revenge for his brother's death and has vowed to kill them all. Meanwhile, Cullen goes after Kenneth Tyson, his second target, and shoots him before Tyson tries to record a video of a kidnapped girl. As Cullen leaves the apartment, the hitman called Killer, who has been spying on him, tries to kill him. They exchange gunfire, but Cullen manages to escape, leaving Killer furious. In the meantime, Detective Humphreys goes to his girlfriend's house, and she argues about him not spending time with his son, and insists that he should take their son to basketball game. While driving his son to his basketball game, Detective Cicero calls him and informs him about Kenneth's murder, urging him to report to the crime scene immediately. When Humphreys arrives, he discovers that Kenneth used to make disturbing videos and intended to do the same to the girl in his apartment. During their investigation, Cicero informs him that witnesses saw another shooter who exchanged gunfire with Cullen in the hallway, but they lack further information. After the unsuccessful attempt on Cullen's life, Killer, filled with frustration, confides in his girlfriend Lily about Cullen's existence. Lily reassures him that he will eventually get his revenge, as he always does. Grateful for her support, Killer proposes to Lily and asks her to marry him. The next day at the FBI office, Detective Cicero notices the scars on Humphreys' arms and inquires about his past struggles with drugs. Humphreys evades her question and instead talks about his girlfriend Maria. Eventually, he confesses to having a drug problem but insists that he quit after his son was born. Meanwhile, Cullen continues eliminating his targets and arrives at his former girlfriend Nan Porterman's residence. To his dismay, he learns that she has moved on, started a family, and terminated their unborn child after he prevented her from visiting him in prison. Saddened by the news, Cullen leaves her house, but Nan assures him of her support and encourages him to seek his revenge. Killer and Lily get married and celebrate their own way. Killer tells Lily that he wants to leave his dangerous life behind and start fresh with her. Meanwhile, Cullen is planning to kill his next target, Nixon. When Cullen sees Nixon at a club, he realizes Nixon was the one who killed his brother. They both go to the bathroom, where Nixon reveals he was expecting Cullen. They fight, but Cullen stabs Nixon and escapes. After leaving the club, Cullen calls Nixon's son to tell him what happened. Meanwhile, Killer, who wants to quit his job, can't stop thinking about his unfinished task. He gives in to the temptation and decides to go after Cullen. Lily finds out and tries to stop him, fearing for his life, but they argue and he leaves anyway. The next morning, Killer and the cop both get ready for their jobs. Humphreys calls Cicero and tells her about the stabbing. He thinks Cullen might be responsible, but she disagrees. Humphreys decides to investigate the crime scene to see if it's connected to Cullen's shootings. Meanwhile, Humphreys and Cullen hear that Nixon survived and is in the hospital. Cullen remembers how Nixon killed his brother and decides to go finish him off. Humphreys suspects this and goes to the hospital to keep an eye on Nixon. Cullen arrives and shoots Nixon while he's in surgery. Humphreys hears the gunshots and starts chasing Cullen. They both shoot at each other but Cullen sees Humphreys' police badge and decides not to kill him. Cullen leaves. On his way back, Cullen gets a call from Nixon's son. The son asks if Cullen killed his dad, and Cullen admits it. The son threatens to come after Cullen. Cullen doesn't try to stop him and tells him to do what he thinks is right. While on the call, Cullen sees Killer, who has been told where Cullen is. They have a dangerous car chase, but Cullen manages to burst Killer's car tires. However, Killer shoots Cullen in the neck. Cullen escapes again, and this makes Killer angry. Killer decides he must kill Cullen no matter what. He calls his informant for an update, but the informant tells him to finish the job quickly. After escaping from Killer, Cullen returns home and confronts his mother, pointing a gun at her. He believes his father betrayed them after a bank robbery because he demanded a share of the money, which they refused to give. However, his mother reveals that his father had actually died before the incident took place. Cullen explains that he wasn't initially involved in his brother Gary's plan to rob the bank, but their driver backed out at the last moment, so he volunteered to help. Cullen wanted to repay Gary's care for him by participating in the plan, but tragically, he lost his brother in the process. While looking at family pictures, Cullen notices Maria, who used to be Gary's girlfriend, and learns that she was the one who betrayed them. He picks up Gary's ashes and decides to go after her. As he leaves the house, he overhears sermons about right and wrong. Meanwhile, Humphreys returns to his office where everyone praises him for getting close to Cullen at the hospital. Cicero informs him that the gang members involved in Gary's murder were only minor criminals and not connected to any major cases. At the same time, Cullen, now with only one target left, Alexander Jared, begins searching for him. When he tracks him down, Cullen realizes that Jared has become a Christian minister and quickly recognizes him. After everyone else leaves, Jared reveals that Cullen has been the subject of his recent sermons, and Cullen acknowledges that he has heard them all. Jared takes Cullen for a walk and confesses that he adopted a boy. However, Cullen believes that this doesn't erase his past misdeeds. Jared explains that although he was part of the gang, he had no knowledge of the plan to kill Gary. In fact, he tried to stop them but couldn't save him. Jared reveals that he was only hired to guard the gates and had no information about the mastermind behind the plan. After the incident, he went to prison, and it changed his life. He turned away from his sins and decided to dedicate his life to helping others and preventing crimes. Touched by Jared's transformation, Cullen forgives him and cannot bring himself to shoot him. He asks Jared to return to his family. Later, as Cullen sits alone at the camp, Killer arrives with the intention of shooting him. Meanwhile, Detective Humphreys, who has also arrived at the location, calls Cicero and informs her that he's going after them. Worried about Humphreys, Cicero urges him to wait for backup. However, Humphreys explains that time is running out, and they might kill each other at any moment. Inside the camp, Killer discovers his list of names and realizes that he has avenged everyone except for the person who hired him to kill Cullen. However, Cullen remains unaware of this. As they face each other, the cop arrives and aims his gun at Killer. Threatened by the cop, Killer drops his gun. Unexpectedly, Humphreys shoots Cullen, revealing that he was the last person involved in Gary's murder, but Cullen couldn't see him. Killer, who had never seen Humphreys before, realizes that he is the one who hired him to kill Cullen. Humphreys explains that Cullen was unaware of his involvement, which Humphreys had already deduced when he let Cullen go at the hospital. He also reveals that Gary's girlfriend was his informant who informed him about the bank robbery. Humphreys tries to pay Killer for his services, but Killer refuses, feeling that he doesn't deserve it since he failed to complete the job. Killer leaves, asking Humphreys not to contact him again. He calls Lily and informs her that he is finally coming home now that his job is done. Meanwhile, Detective Cicero, who is on her way to assist Humphreys, discovers that he knew about Cullen from the beginning of the case. She contacts her superior, who assigned Humphreys to the investigation, but he reveals that he didn't assign the case to Humphreys. It was Humphreys who requested to be part of it. With a clean slate, Humphreys calls Maria and expresses his readiness to start anew with her. While talking to her, Cullen surprisingly appears out of nowhere and shoots Humphreys in the head. Cullen reveals that Humphreys survived the shot because of a metallic plate in his head. The FBI team arrives at the scene, finding Humphreys' lifeless body, but Cicero decides to conceal the truth about his involvement in the case. Cullen scatters Gary's ashes into the sea and drives away, while Jared begins a sermon about forgiveness. In this way, movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more films recap.